Good morning, peeps. A little somber today, being September 11th, so that's what this porch talk is going to be about. September 11th, 2001. Everyone that's old enough remembers where they were. At the time, I was working at a medical waste treatment facility before I got hired with the fire department. I would start with the fire department about 6 months later in April of 2020, or April of 2002. Easy for me to say. Uh, that morning, we always listened to Howard Stern on a local station before he got taken off, and we heard the first plane fly in, and people really weren't sure what it was. And then once the second one went in, I'm sure as like everyone else in this country, we knew this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a accidental fly, pilot error or something like that. And then we heard stories about the Pentagon. The plane in Shanksville actually flew over Pittsburgh. Shanksville is probably about an hour away from us, up the turnpike there. Actually, I should say down the turnpike because it's south of us. Uh, and where those folks did what they did there. 343 firemen and just under 500 total first responders. I think the number is 498 died that day. Now, many, many more have gotten sick after from the inhaling of the dust and just being exposed to those chemicals. 9/11 related illnesses. Jon Stewart was a big champion for the responders of 9/11. But as of yet, really, the government, some 23 years later, has not uh, done what they needed to do to take care of those people. They could do more, and they need to do more. And this is many different regimes, Republican, Democrat. Uh, those folks should be taken care of, just like our veterans should be. Our veterans should be able to choose their medical care. If they want to go somewhere in California to get seen by a doctor, guess what? When do you want to go? You could pick your tickets up here. And that's just the way it should be. There's no excuse for it not to be. I'll debate anyone who disagrees with me that till I die. Uh, but to think about 9/11 and think about the loss, the thousands of people that were lost, families that never really found closure. You got to understand when a 110-story building collapses, the force that it puts on anything, it basically disintegrates it. Uh, if you see the picture of there's a fireman, a police officer, and I think it's a Port Authority cop or maybe an FBI guy carrying in a chair or carrying a guy who's deceased. One of the ways you could get people out is put them in a chair and carry them. And then if there's four guys or even two guys have each side, it's a little less strenuous. That's something that you're taught. I don't know if they teach that anymore. But you can use a chair to move people, put someone in a chair. That was Father Michael Judge. He was one of the chaplains for the FDNY, and he's the first victim of 9/11, first known victim. He was administering last rites to someone outside, and one of the jumpers, the people that were jumping, because if not, they were going to be burned to death, landed on him, and they got him out of there. But if you see that picture of that guy, that's Father Michael Judge, FDNY chaplain and victim number one in the 9/11 attacks. Uh, if you could look at it this way too, it's the single greatest rescue in the history of America, right? We know that several thousand people died, but how many people got out because those firemen went in, those cops went in, medics went in. The initial command post that they had set up, you want to look at a collapse zone when you're setting up a big building like that. Nobody thought those buildings were collapsed. But basically, you're looking at 1.5 times the size of the building. So if the building's 8 floors, it's roughly 80 feet high. You should be back. You could do the math with me, about 200 feet back. Your apparatus, your command post, because if that building collapses, you want to go 1.5 times the collapse zone, is what we call it, and be out of there. 110 stories is city blocks. Even in New York City, they couldn't have done that, and no one expected that to happen. Uh, there was firemen that went in there, and when they went in there, they shook each other's hands. They said, hope to see you after this call. But they knew what they were getting into. They knew that this was going to be something extraordinary. Uh, I don't know if they knew that it was going to come down or not. There was issues with the radios getting out and transmitting. I don't know if how many people had issues with that. They knew that after the first World Trade Center attack, yet they didn't correct that. Right? Giuliani was the mayor at the time, and keep politics out of it. There's not many firemen that like him. Way before anything he's done presidentially, just when he was the mayor up there. Uh, just a lot of things don't sit right with me about the way that the folks were treated after. Now, the city itself, the neighbors, the neighborhoods embrace them. The country embraced them, but our government has yet to really embrace them. And there's a lot they could do. They could do a lot more. They could do more for the families of people that were lost, people that got sick after, not just firemen either, everybody. But people went up. We had two guys from McKeesport that went up, Jimmy Young, Chris Searcy. They went up 2 days after. They found the firehouse. There's, pretty crazy stories about that too. As far as Jimmy met the priest at one of the churches. They went over to a church to get chairs, to borrow chairs, and the priest that opened the door gave Jimmy his diploma here in McKeesport at Sarah High School in the 80s. And Father Monahan was his name. He opened the door. They appeared at a fire station. They got through checkpoints, and they just a random fire station they went to. And 2 years earlier, they had lost two guys at a fire. Their names were Jimmy Young and Chris Seidenberg. So when they're in there, and the guys are just making breakfast, we got to eat, and then we're going to go down, and they called it the pile. We're going to go down on the pile, and we're going to look for our friends. Any part of our friend that we could bring home to their family gives that family some closure. So despite the situation, despite the inferno, many floors down, they told me a couple days later, you couldn't even go down there because it was so hot. The fire was still burning underneath, and there was no way to get to it, so to speak. But I just, on this day, would ask everyone, just take a moment out of your day or two, think about them, think about the sacrifice they made. They really shared their last full measure of devotion. They knew it was going to be an extremely dangerous job. Whether they knew the towers were going to go down or not, I don't know. I shared some audio. On the audio, there's different 10 codes and things like that. If anyone wants to know what they mean, I can tell you what they mean. We don't use them anymore, really. You hear people say 10-4 because everyone else has different 10 codes, right? We don't use them. I heard it during the Florida fire. There's 10 codes on the dispatch, but that's not like a national standard. 10-6 might mean this. 10:45 in New York City, multiple civilians are deceased, and that if you hear that on the radio, multiple 10:45s, that's what that is. You don't want to put that on the air for people listening. So they understood what it was, and they did everything that humanly possible that they could do. I would even go past humanly possible. The folks that ran in there that day were superheroes, and they evacuated tens of thousands of people. So tens of thousands of people are alive today because of the act of those just under 500 first responders and regular citizens who did things, janitors who with keys ran around and opened doors, and people who didn't leave their post, and they passed away because of that. But how many people did they save? How many people did they get out? How do you measure a life? What they've done in their lives in totality, and what they did at the end of their lives when they might have known, especially the firemen. I'll say this: when one tower went down, I think the firemen in the other tower knew. It's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time till we go down too. And instead of them running down flights of stairs, whether they would have made it or not, they continued their mission. They continued leading people out, getting people to the stairwells. And remember this: if you're ever in a big building fire, usually the stairwells are the safest place. They're pressurized with air, so nothing's going to be able to get in there if those doors are kept closed. As long as they're not chalked open, that stairwell is not going to fill with smoke. And if it does get smoke in it, it should go up and out. Stairwells are a safe place. If you have any kind of mobility issues, if you're in a chair and you could get to a stairwell and alert someone that you're there, the guys and gals should be able to come get you. We teach people that, including ourselves. And in some of that audio, you'll hear people saying, one building went down, get in the stairwell, thinking the stairwell is the safest place. But in those two buildings, nothing was safe. They didn't know that. Some of them might have known it after the first one went down. I'm not sure. But today, think about them. Spend a few minutes in thought and prayer, whatever it is that you do, and just remember their sacrifice. Remember their family sacrifice, and remember all the people that they saved. Tens of thousands of people are alive today and live past that day because of the 343 of New York City and the other first responders. Like I said, just under 500 in one day. it's the totality of it, thinking of it, it's mind-boggling to me. I know what it's like to lose one officer like we have a year ago, and what it does to a town. But to lose that many families, that many funerals, and those guys got through that. Those guys and girls in New York City got through that and continued to stay on the job. To me, that's the mental stress, the survivor's remorse, survivor's guilt that they had, and they fought through that. And wow, I don't even know. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable what they did. And I just want to give them a special tribute from me, from my local McKeesport Firefighters Local 10, and from fire departments paid and volunteer across this country. So if you see the flags down today, give them a thought, if you would. Give their families a thought. The people that are left 23 years later are still devastated by this. Guys go to work and they don't come home. Fire department, police department, yeah, that's part of the job. What about the tax people and the Merrill Lynch people? These are just going to work. They're accountants. They're sitting at a desk. They never thought this was going to happen. The people that jumped from 60, 70, 80th floors never thought that they would have to make a decision like that in their life, right? Never. But it's hard to understand how anyone could do this and say that this isn't my religion or whatever. And I know every religion has its extremists, and I don't hate Islam or people that worship Islam. But those people that day, they were expecting after their death to get something in return. Well, they got something, all right, but it isn't what they expected, right? They're toasting like marshmallows for eternity. You're supposed to forgive people, but I'll never forgive those motherfuckers. Never. Never, 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 never. Ever in the history of my life or my existence. They're murderers. And what happens to you after you die, it's up for debate. Nobody knows for sure, but I can tell you this. They're not getting what they expected. So we'll leave it at that and keep it on a positive note. But just remember today, 9/11, 23 years. The older you get, the faster time goes, huh? Time's a thief. And let's remember every one of those brave men and women, the citizens, the people that did after. So much they did. Bringing food, just hanging out, and how our country was at that point. And it's sad that our country has to go through something like that to come together. It truly is. But at least when something bad like that happens, we do put our bullshit aside. And today, let's put our bullshit aside for one day. And let's remember them and leave the politics out of it. And just remember what they did. And all the thousands of people that they saved. Thousands of people that they saved. Thousands, tens of thousands of people. The largest rescue mission in the history of America. It was 3rd and 20, and them guys went in and said, we ain't punting. We're going to get this first down, and they did everything that they could do, sacrificing their own lives. So tens of thousands might live. Brave. Balls like two heads duct taped together, right? It's the best compliment I could give you if you're a fireman. But I'll leave you to it, and I hope you have a good Wednesday today, and I hope you just spend some time thinking about them and their families and the sacrifices that were made that day by a myriad of people, not just emergency people, regular people, bakers, butchers, bartenders, doctors, lawyers, everybody pitched in that day. And let's hope that something terrible doesn't happen for us to get back to that. Let's try to get back to that. Just be good people. But remember them today, okay? I'm going to leave it to you now, and I hope you have a good Wednesday and the rest of the week. Coach Kev out.